So Lance Zierlein, one of the OG triple OGs in the draft game, he works for NFL.com and he just dropped his first mock draft. And I'll say post Senior Bowl, this has to be one of the craziest mock drafts I've seen. Now, I expected some adjustments, of course, to a lot of the consensus once more people start looking at rankings and doing their evaluations. And of course, the Senior Bowl gives us a lot of information. But some of the stuff in here is just so off of what we've seen before and from some of the consensus and mock drafts of some of your favorite analysts. I felt like we had to talk about it here in this video. But real quick, hit the subscribe button down below if you're new to the channel. I'm Aaron Duncan. Recap and analysis of the Panthers is what I focus on. But I also have a little soft spot for the draft because the draft is all year round for everybody. So we talk about the draft on this channel as well. So make sure you are subscribed. And please give the video a thumbs up. Helps me out in the algorithm. Takes 2 seconds. But I wanted to pull up the mock draft and just go off and look at some of the stuff that I thought was just a little bit off. And when I say off, I'm not going to bash it. I don't really like to bash mock drafts because we literally have no idea. There's still the combine. There's still a lot of the stuff and rumors come out in combine. We have a lot better feel of where prospects stand. But there's just so many things that are like curveballs compared to some of the other mocks we've seen. It's very, very interesting. But obviously, you got to give your disclaimers or whatever. He said he's basically using team needs and relying on his grades. He does grades for the NFL. One of the, like I said, OGs. He does grades on a ton of prospects. Much respect to Zierlein, so I ain't gonna really bash him in this one, but he's saying that he's doing it based off of what he's done, and a lot of his grades for players preliminary have been put on NFL.com, so if you want to check those out, you can go ahead and do that. I'll put the link to this mock in the description as well if you guys want to see it. But he has Cam Ward going #1 overall. He said, I don't see a generational talent in this draft, and I doubt the Titans do, but I think they will try to trade out of this spot. He kind of put that in quotes because, of course, the GM was saying that, hey, we're not going to pass on the generational talent for a quarterback. I've also heard rumors that the reason why they fired their prior GM is because they want Shedeur. So I think Shedeur could be in play, but I personally feel like Cam Ward has the leg up on Shedeur Sanders personally, but no surprise there. But a lot of people think that Abdul Carter is the best player in this draft, and they'll do that. But I don't think Abdul Carter is generational either. So maybe they do go quarterback with Cam Ward. Number 2, Cleveland has Abdul Carter. This makes a lot of sense now with this Myles Garrett situation. I don't know how it plays out. I think Myles Garrett kind of just wants money. But at the same time, Cleveland has to be in one of the worst places of any team in the NFL right now. Like, there's a lot of dumpster fire teams in the league. But in terms of what they have tied up with Deshaun Watson, the draft capital, the fact that they had a guy like Nick Chubb, they had Amari Cooper at one point, Myles Garrett, and they really have, nothing to show for it underneath Andrew Berry and Stefanski. It's really a dumpster fire, man. But going with Abdul Carter, even if you don't get rid of Myles Garrett, you can pair them together. I don't hate that pick. Travis Hunter going to the Giants, so them passing on Shedeur Sanders is a big thing. Again, I don't know what they end up doing. We know Sean is probably on the hot seat. If they don't get a quarterback or figure something out, it's over for them. Even if they do get a quarterback, it's probably still over. What do they do in this scenario if they go Travis Hunter? Who knows? But they get another playmaker that can play offense if they needed to. Somebody that's dynamic, opposite of Malik Neighbors. But it seems like, according to this, Zierlein has him playing more so at the cornerback position. I agree. Number 4, this is where it gets a little bit nutty. The Patriots do not go wide receiver. They go Will Campbell to shore up the offensive line, get some protection for Drake May. I don't hate it because, of course, Ted McMillan is out there. But you're going to see in this draft how wacky it can get. But Will Campbell is a guy there. They have a ton of money. A lot of people expecting to make a big play for T. Higgins. They tried to make a big play for Calvin Ridley last year. Failed. Jacksonville ends up going Will Johnson. He's one of the blue chip cornerbacks in this class. Not really surprised there. I've seen Mason Graham here on some. Obviously, we know the history of Michigan players and Trent Balk. He's no longer there, so that frees him up to take Will Johnson and not address the trenches. The Las Vegas Raiders end up getting Shedeur Sanders. Not a surprise. I think this could be a realistic scenario. I don't think there's any way that if Shedeur's on the board, they pass on him just because of the history. Tom Brady. I mean, obviously, they just got Chip Kelly as their OC. I just think that it's a no-brainer. This is where it gets nutty. Ashton Jeanty, running back to the New York Jets. The reasoning is an analytics committee won't like this pick, but so be it. The Jets have a stagnant attack, and Breece Hall has not reached 1,000 rushing yards in any of the 3 seasons. Jeanty provides instant adrenaline to the offense and creates buzz in Aaron Glenn's first season. Now, Brees Hall, for the analytics community, the fantasy community, they love Brees Hall. They've hyped Brees Hall just because of what they projected him to be. He did not live up to those standards this past year. For them to go running back here would be crazy. Now, and I no, there's no doubt Ashton Genty is RB1, but my goodness, the Jet. It would be very Jet-like for them to go running back, even though they have a new regime going in. But that's crazy to me. Now, as a Panthers fan, obviously I got the hat on. I'll turn it forward for this one. Tyler Warren, the tight end, being drafted here by the Panthers is crazy. Now, they get Bryce Young a weapon, but at the same time, they're passing on Mason Graham. They're passing on Ted McMillan. Guys like that. Like he sees that Bryce's turnaround is giving life to the Panthers, but he still needs more help. Warren can be a perfect safety blanket. Now, Tyler Warren at 8 seems a little rich to me. In a trade back, I'm more open to it. You have the yak. You have the big target. You have a guy that can stretch the field. He brings something dynamic all around. Now, Ted McMillan, I do love his yak ability. He's a bigger body wide receiver. I have no problem with that. People want to talk about the separation issues. I don't really see that. I see him, for a guy of his size and caliber, I see him having fine ability to separate. The cans are dependable. Bryce Young really worked on those quote-unquote trust throws that we heard him talking about with Xavier Legette and some other guys. But that would give them a dynamic number one wide receiver if they went tech. But having Warren, they match him with the rookie they drafted last year with JT Sanders. JT Sanders is a great player. I think his ceiling is not as high as Tyler Warren just because of the yards after catch ability, the catch radius, and just the versatility. I mean, Tyler Warren can line up in the Wildcat, guys, and take snaps and do things like that. There's just things that he brings to the table that JT Sanders just doesn't. But you can also go a lot of 12 personnel. And with Dave Canales, his background with the Seahawks, they run a lot of, they like to use and involve the tight ends. So I think there's some things they can do. Tyler Warren, I don't hate the pick, maybe a little bit rich at 8, but getting more dynamic weapons, especially one like him, I'm fine getting the best player at their position in the draft at some point at number 8. I'm great with it. And next up, edge number 2 is Mikael Williams on the board, going to the New Orleans Saints. It says 8-time Pro Bowler Cam Jordan has enjoyed a terrific run, but he'll be turning 36, and his sack production has plummeted. Williams has tremendous traits and upside, feels a big need. Now, we know the Saints love their big body edge rushers. They tried it. I mean, obviously, they have Cam Jordan. They tried it with Marcus Davenport. Didn't really work out, but that's just his type. They have a type. I thought that they personally would go Ted McMillan if he's available at 9. Obviously, Chris Olave, he's there, but he has some concussions, missed some time. Derek Carr doesn't seem to really like him much because he keeps throwing hospital balls to him. Rashid Shaheed is there, but he's just a speed guy. I thought that a guy like Ted McMillan could bring them a different dynamic, but in this mock, Mikael Williams goes on the board. Let's keep it pushing a little bit. The Niners. If the Niners are able to get Mason Graham, man, and sure up their D-line, man, obviously I think Javon Hargrave could be a cap casualty for them this year just because he hasn't really given them the production I think they liked, and also they got to pay Brock Purdy. So they're going to have to get younger, especially on the interior. If Mason Graham falls here, he's one of the blue chip players according to a lot of people's list. I'm not as high on him like that because of, I think unless you have certain size and traits, you being projected as a top flight defensive tackle, I think you're limited. Do I think he's that Jalen Carter type guy or that Quentin Williams type guy that he could be there eventually? I don't think so. And maybe he could. He'll be a solid player in my opinion, but I just think the lack of size is going to limit his ultimate ceiling as an interior rusher because he kind of has short arms. But for him to fall to the Niners with playing under the new Robert Saleh being back, crazy. Walter Nolan going to the Cowboys. Now, this is a shocker to me because a guy like Ted or a guy like Luther Burden has been mocked here at times because we know they love their offense and they need a number 2 outside of CD. But Walter Nolan had a great Senior Bowl. His stock is up. He has that size and that disruptive ability that I talked about that may or may not be there with Mason Graham. Not saying I think Mason Graham is still D tackle 1, but Nolan made a great case of being upside. I think being a 3 tech and replacing what's the guy's name? Osa Odigizua going to free agency. I think this is a logical move for the Cowboys at 12. I don't hate it. Mike Green, after the hell of a Senior Bowl that he had going to the Falcons do need pass rush help in the worst way. They just they just never can get it right. They're going to bring in a new defensive coordinator, Ulbrich, obviously from formerly of the Jets. We'll see if what system they kind of run. Do they go to that 4-man front, or do they try to do the odd fronts that Raheem has the background with the Rams and stuff? We'll see. I'm interested to see, but I think Mike Green was better off standing up and playing, so I would expect them to keep on with that odd front style of defense. The Bengals end up getting Ted McMillan. Here was another surprise. Ted McMillan falling all the way to 17. And if T. Higgins goes in free agency, Ted McMillan is the next best thing. He's my comp for him. I think he's a little bit of a AJ Green with less of a deep ball in terms of getting behind the defense, but I think he'd be just effective downfield. He kind of reminds me of that similar skill set per se, but I like Ted McMillan going to the Bengals. It's funny because we know their defense was their downfall, but the fact that they're still going wide receiver just lets you know where their head is at. Of course, they couldn't afford T. Higgins. They get T. Higgins light in the draft and get a bunch of more years of him on a rookie deal, and they can pay Jamar Chase all the money that he deserves. The Seahawks go Luther Burden, another receiver off the board. So top 2 wide receivers don't go into the middle of the round. We know this is a down class compared to last year, which was one of the better ones in a while. But Luther Burden going to the Seahawks is very, very interesting because it says he could take over for Tyler Lockett. I don't see the outside receiver upside that some see with Luther Burden. So how him, potentially Jackson Smith and Jigba, who plays a slot as well. And whatever happens with DK Metcalf, I think Metcalf could be traded. So I think a going receiver is not the worst thing in the world. Maybe Golden is an option here. I'm hearing his stock is rising pretty fast as well. But Luther Burden to the Seahawks, very, very interesting. The Chargers going another Michigan player. This is not a surprise. It's not a shocker. I like Kenneth Grant's game. He's super athletic. He's going to test crazy well. In the combine. I'm here. He was on the freaks list from the Athletic, so I expect his combine numbers to be out of this world. And I think this is a good place. Mid to late first for him. Good spot for him. Shamar Stewart, who had a pretty solid in terms of what the buzz sounds like. Senior Bowl, very, very raw. He goes to the Packers. I don't know if the Packers are the way to go. I think when they have Lucas Van Ness, he really hasn't done a ton for them. So they do need some edge help. Obviously, Rashawn Gary, but getting another raw type of player, I don't know if that's what the Packers do. Maybe they have a type and they just like that physical play, but I don't see Jamar Stewart going to the Packers. I don't really know about that. Jahdae Barron to the Minnesota Vikings. Obviously, they're going to potentially lose some guys in the secondary to free agency. We're buying them, I think, the safety. Barron has that versatility to be able to play nickel, can play some safety. He played mostly outside corner this year, but he's been able to play in the box at times as well, can blitz as well. I think this is actually a great fit for the Vikings because of Brian Flores' system. This is a great using your brain type of pick by Lance Zierlein there. Houston going wide receiver with Ibuka. Tank Dell still recovering. Stephon Diggs going to be a free agent. You reunite Ibuka with his former college teammate and CJ Stroud. They got the new offensive coordinator from the Rams that just signed up recently. This makes a lot of sense. Their defense, I think, has been pretty decent shape, and they're just going to try to continue to build that offense and try to find their new identity as they turn the page from Bobby Slowick. Mecca Ibuka is 3. So this is what the 4th wide receiver. He's wide receiver 4 and pick 25. So a nice little run coming up here. The Buffalo Bills go wide receiver yet again, picking in the 30s as they go with Trey Harris. Some people I heard that they were kind of a little bit disappointed in the progress of Keon Coleman, but it is what it is. But James Pierce Jr., who some people have as edge number 2, falling all the way to the Eagles. And of course, Josh Sweat is going to be probably a free agent, get a boatload of money and leave there, especially if they win a ring. But James Pierce Jr. would be nuts going to Philadelphia to have that kind of speed to go with the rest of their defensive line. Obviously, they're losing Milton Williams as well, but they're just going to keep reloading through the draft, man. The Eagles just make common sense moves, and Kansas City goes Tyreek Williams. So I think that this was one of the most wackiest drafts I've seen. Obviously, starting from Genty at 7, you see Ted McMillan falling all the way to the Bengals. it's just some crazy stuff in this Lance Zierlein one. Again, it's just based off of his grades, not what he's heard. Obviously, some of the other analysts from NFL.com, they go based off of what they're hearing and stuff and try to piece things together. Daniel Jeremiah is the one that does that. But interesting to see that Mason Graham falls out of the top 10 when he's considered top 5 by most people in this draft class. And of course, the Giants pass on quarterback and Shedeur ends up in Vegas. Crazy, crazy, crazy. You guys let me know down below in the comments what you thought about his mock draft. Do you think it was crazy or outlandish? Do you think that some of this stuff makes sense? Do you think that some of these guys that we've been really high on, like Mason Graham, would fall out of the top 10 and a guy like Genty would bump into the top 10? That was a weird thing for me. But without further ado, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. I appreciate you guys watching. My name is Aaron Duncan. I'll see you next time.